To one and all once again, EK, the real right with you, if you want my lawyer's name. Oh boy. Good evening, folks, and welcome to this panel discussion, The Right Direction. Tonight, our topic will be COVID-19 and the entertainment industry. And we've got a well-renowned and loaded set of panelists for you this evening, and they are all professionals and all well accomplished in their field. And so tonight Diana, yes, we got a list still in the background because we have to wipe down because of the COVID protocols, and so right there, keep it handy. All right, so I think we're just about set and ready to open our discussion for this evening. And just to let you know, our panelists this evening will comprise of Conris Maynard, Randy Jeffords, Damian Crawford, Azim Bailey. So our discussion, as I said before, will center around the entertainment industry. And to present to you will be the persons who I just named. And we're going to go right into our conversation and bring up our first presenter for this evening. And let me just introduce him to you. Most of you would already know him, Mr. Randy Jeffords. He's an entrepreneur, and he is the creative mind behind Lime Beach Bar, the Miss Caribbean Queen pageant, which is held during the annual Culturama Festival at Nevis every year. It's a big hit. It's well attended. It's renowned. The pageant is one of the most coveted titles in the Caribbean region and has even drawn the attention of South and North American pageant enthusiasts. Randy is also the owner, as I said before, of Lime Beach Bar, located on Pinny's Beach, and which since 2010 has been a local hotspot for entertainment from DJs, live bands, fashion shows, fetes, you name it. And of recently, the big hit, the bingo. And so we invite Mr. Randy Jeffords to now come and share with us his presentation for this evening. Randy, how are you doing? Randy, you there? just want to make sure we got Randy up. Randy, can you hear me? I think you got to unmute yourself or something. So while we get Randy all sorted out, let me just say to all our listeners that tonight's discussion will form a series of discussions being held with the general public as to the way forward out of the COVID situation. As we know, COVID-19 has affected us in ways that, to this day, I'm having a little bit of a problem comprehending. But as you know, because of the COVID-19 virus and the way it is spread, social activities, the interaction between you and I and everyone else has somehow been suspended. And so getting back to where we were will be of utmost importance, because as you know, entertainment, it forms the base of practically any economy. In every sector of the economy, you can see where entertainment is often used to either promote or to indoctrinate, what you name it. Entertainment is always and ever present. And so coming out of COVID, what we have learned is that entertainment within the region, more specifically here in St. Kitts and Nevis, needs lots of attention. It needs growing, it needs formalizing even more than it already is. And though me saying that is not taking away from the professionals that have been practicing their craft so far in this sector. And so coming out of that, more formalization of this industry will definitely be needed. And so we would definitely love to have all creatives on board with this conversation as to how we move forward, getting out of this COVID situation and getting back to some form of normalcy. Randy, we good to go? Yes, you're up. Still having a bit of a technical glitch here, getting Mr. Randy Jeffords up and running. All right, so while we sort out Mr. Randy Jeffords, we're going to keep the conversation rolling, because as we are strapped for time, it's 22 minutes after 8 o'clock. We're going to ask Mr. Azim Bailey to make his presentation this evening. And just to give you a little background information about this illustrious career on the production and technical side of entertainment. In 2008, Mr. Azim Bailey graduated from Full Sail University in Orlando, Florida, with a bachelor's degree in show production and touring. While at Full Sail, Mr. Bailey was a lab instructor and, being eager to utilize his skills, toured with several bands across the USA, including Leadhead, Hand to Hand, New Age Rock Giants, Nonpoint. When not on tour, however, Mr. Bailey worked various positions at several festivals such as Aurora, Bear Creek, New Orleans Jazz Festivals, and also held down head audio technician position at some of Orlando's mega churches, namely First Presbyterian, Faith World, First Baptist in Orlando. Coming up to 2010, Mr. Bailey has worked as a sound engineer around the world, many festivals, concerts across the region, USA and Asia. My apologies. Added to his list of talents, Mr. Bailey has served as music producer for various local artists and production manager for several events, including a very coveted and exciting inception fet. He's a musician, plays various instruments, including keyboard, bass, drums, as he used these talents as part of his several endeavors. Those include Royalties Band, Untitled. Mr. Bailey is the founder of those musical groups who we have enjoyed musical presentations from them over the years. At the beginning of 2018, Mr. Bailey started a musical supply and sound consultation company named Money Sound Central. I hope I got that correct. This is not Azim's only business venture. In 2009, it realized the need for a full-service production company. Mr. Bailey formed Red Pill Entertainment Agency. This agency aims to foster the development of creatives in St. Kitts and Nevis, surrounding territories, by offering services such as artist booking, event promotion, and production. Red Pill has put their name on the map by handling the production of the recently concluded virtual edition of Sugar Mass. What more can I say about Mr. Bailey? Mr. President of PACE, which is a recently formed NGO. And ladies and gentlemen, he's here with a wealth of experience, a wealth of knowledge in and around the entertainment industry. Mr. Azim Bailey, welcome, sir.
Good night, Ike, and to everyone listening. Everyone under the sound of my voice, really appreciate having the opportunity to come and present to you guys tonight on COVID-19 and entertainment. Ike, some of the things you were saying in your preamble is so timely and so true. It's really a situation where we have to look seriously at how we are going to navigate it, because we are seeing the effects so far. And the truth is, it's not a pretty picture as it stands now. I think for us to really look at where we need to go, it's important that we really take a look at where we were, even prior to COVID-19. One of the things that is so interesting about St. Kitts is that we have never had a shortage of talent. Talent has always been here in abundance, no matter the discipline, whether it is the performing arts, whether it is a musician, whether it's a dancer. We've seen over the years so many talented people coming out of the Federation and making their stamp worldwide, helping to put St. Kitts-Nevis on the map. What we've had some issues with, though, is seeing a steady stream of this talent being commercialized, and really the formalization of the industry. I think that in recent years, we've seen through the efforts of a lot of my colleagues here on the island, some steps in the right direction. We've seen more and more fetes that are being put on here that encourage travel from neighboring islands, and even from as far as the USA and England. We're seeing artists that are putting their stamp within the region in soca and dancehall. We've even been seeing our visual artists becoming world recognized, being commissioned to perform their duties and execute their talents as far as the African continent. And so we have been seeing recently a lot of people who are taking their talents, really operating in a more professional way. And this is something that we hope to see continuing. Even though there's been this movement by the creatives, sometimes it does feel as though there's still a lack of respect for those of us who operate in this space, who operate in this sector. And so there has been that tug of war happening a bit. And I know that it's a fight that is to continue. And unfortunately, perhaps even fortunate, depending on how you look at it, here we are, COVID-19, and one of the first things to grind to a halt has been entertainment, has been mass gatherings because of the nature of the virus. The virus moves with people, and it affects people. And so we operate in a space where the whole idea of what we do a lot of times, especially in the Caribbean, where live performances, shows, events, no matter the nature, whether it's fetes, birthday parties, carnivals, other sorts of festivals, are predicated really on people coming together and having a shared experience. And so, of course, you know, really and truly, entertainment would have been one of the first things to get closed down, and perhaps maybe one of the last to come back as we knew it before. That being said, just like in many other industries, the people who operate in those industries obviously then would have faced some challenge, seeing a severe drop in revenue. I think it's also important for us to note that, yeah, a lot of the times we look at the parties and the festivals and we think about, yes, the performers, the musicians, we think about the promoters, but bear in mind that the entertainment industry, as you rightly suggested, impacts everything about in society. Nothing moves without culture. And the vehicle for culture is media and entertainment. And so when there is a significant drop off, like we've seen as a result of the protocols and restrictions that are put in place because of COVID-19, when there's those restrictions on the entertainment industry, it obviously affects more than just those practitioners that I mentioned before. I mean, yes, you could think about service providers, whether it is lighting companies, tent providers, staging, sound. Yes, those people, but you must recognize this affects the boutiques where people go and get themselves ready and dolled up, the hairdressers, the bottling companies, the bars, of course, as we mentioned before, entertainment providing a spark to tourism. We have a very, very world-renowned product here in St. Kitts, Nevis, called the St. Kitts Music Festival, that has not happened now for 2 years. That, of course, would have been something that would have sparked tourism in the slow season. So with none of this happening, obviously the effects really are far-reaching and devastating to people in all walks of life, to be honest. And so I think it's important for us to recognize the impact that the protocols have had on the industry, and also recognize that these people who are directly affected, people who aren't able to work, people who in some cases employ other people. I was speaking actually today to a friend of mine who operates a sound system, and he has not been able to work for some time now, since the last set of lockdown protocols. And he employs 3 to 4 people from his community. And so there's now at least 5 families that are really suffering because of the state that we're in. And so it's important for us to recognize that these people are going to need some sort of specific assistance, because what we must appreciate is that, yes, all industries have seen a downturn. There has been there has been a decrease in revenue for pretty much almost every. I don't think there's an industry that has not been impacted in some way. However, with entertainment, it feels as though that downturn is not as a direct result of a lack of demand. Not because people don't want to go out, not because there's some change in people's need to socialize. Um, and so that being the case for a lot of the other industries, it really is difficult. People want to go. People want to go and enjoy time with their friends, have these shared experiences. People want to entertain themselves. Um, Artists, musicians, singers, they want to interact with the people that their music resonates with. And so that desire is there. But again, we have seen where that's just been something that we've really been struggling to bring back on board. Even prior to this last set of lockdowns, we would have had restrictions on how much people could attend events. We had the 100 and the maximum for indoor events, 150 people maximum for outdoor events. And that really caused a lot of event promoters to really question the feasibility of even putting on events. We've seen some changes in terms of who could be hired, the size of the productions, the size of the events, all because of persons having to know where these options. And so I think it's important for us as we move forward to really have deep discussions about what we want to see, what we want the entertainment sector to look like moving forward. Do we want to see a situation where there is only accommodation for persons based on, for instance, vaccination status? Do we want that to really be the direction we go in? Do we want it to be somewhere, a situation where persons who are interested in putting on events have to really think twice because there's cap limits on how many people could come? Is there ways that we can navigate in a way where we can have a restart of the industry, as well as do things to keep people safe? And I think there is ways and means that we can do that. You mentioned, as part of PACE, we've been having these specific discussions and are in the process of putting proposals together. And coming out of those discussions, what I'm realizing is that the word creatives and creativity does not just apply to what it is we can produce, whether on stage, whether it is in front of a computer. It also can apply to us finding solutions for us to move forward and get out of the present situation. And we've been getting so many creative ideas, so many ideas that are based in science. And so I believe that if we are not lazy, if we are willing to do the work, if we are willing to look into all possible avenues, we could find ways to really bring back the entertainment sector in a way that could really allow it to take back its rightful place as one of the main economic drivers in our economy. I know that we are going to have some discussion as we move on in regards to how that goes, but quickly I'd like to mention, we have the CPL coming up, and bear in mind that sporting events do fall under the same umbrella of entertainment, as well as mass gatherings. And we see the CPL finding creative ways and putting things in place to really try and keep the patrons safe and still deliver a product that is entertaining. They have the 50% cap in terms of people that will be allowed, tickets that will be sold. I think that's a model that we could look towards as we move forward. We see them also looking at vaccinated patrons only. I do believe that there's ways that we could navigate that, and perhaps we could look at some of the other countries in finding ways to navigate that. For instance, implementing the use of rapid testing, which is something that seemed to have not really penetrated us here, but it's being used in different territories around the world. So using that to try and mitigate against the risk of having people gather who may be infected with the virus. So I'm just reading a small message that I'm getting here. So yeah, and what I'm being asked is what are some of the ways that creatives have been using to ply their trade? One of the things that has been very interesting to me is how persons have been able to use social media to really continue to interact with their fans. I do believe, though, that we're going to have to look at how do we monetize that interaction? That has been a challenge thus far. Is it going to be a pay-per-view model? Is it going to be a model where we have artists interacting with fans, and then perhaps corporate entities paying for access to those fans in the form of sponsorship? That's another model that we could look at. But I do believe that we've seen how artists have had to adapt. To the crisis. In terms of challenges, for creatives, I think that because we operated in a way where we use for instance, music as a way to promote ourselves, and then we would earn based on live performances, especially in the case of live performers in the music field. I think that has been a real challenge because no, we're not able. I could speak for myself. I operated as you can say, mainly as a sound engineer, a touring sound engineer. And so my ability to work is predicated on two things: the ability for people to gather and for me to be able to travel. And so obviously, with COVID-19 and the restrictions that were put in place, it became pretty much impossible for me to carry on working the way I did. And so I had to adapt and move into perhaps even doing more broadcast type events, lending my skills in virtual setups and stuff like that. But again, it's difficult for us because now we are trying to figure out what the model is for us to monetize those types of engagements. And so, yes, we have to continually adapt because who knows exactly what the future holds. But I do believe that we have to plan. We have to, again, determine specific goals for how we want the sector to look. And so using that as a guide, come up with ways with which we can achieve that, whether it's in a phased approach over time, with clear triggers that would, for instance, move for maybe 50% capacity at events to maybe 75, 80, and then hopefully to 100 in the not too distant future. So we have to have these conversations. And I think that is why it's so important for us to really to have discussions like this. And again, I want to really thank you guys for allowing me to come here and present. But I think my time is up. Hopefully we could continue the conversation as questions roll in.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey, for that concise insight into what's really happening with the state of affairs with regard to entertainment. All right. I think we're going to move right along now. And I think Mr. Randy Jeffers is just about set and ready to make his presentation. So we are going to invite him now. He already got his illustrious introduction. So, Randy, how are you doing, man? Be sure to unmute yourself.
You can hear me now?
Got you loud and clear.
Oh, you got to bear with me. I'm not really good with technology, you know?
Don't worry, we're going to get you up to speed. We got you.
Yes, thank you for inviting me to this discussion. That was Mr. Bailey. He just spoke. You can hear me, EK?
Yes, that was Mr. Bailey, Azim Bailey.
Okay, he touched on most of the things I had pretty much lined up to say. However, in what I would like for entertainment going forward, I mean, EK, I miss being able to call you until you come over. EK, I want you to play Friday night. I miss calling you. I know you came over to Nevis for the Versus, and we had quite a few local events during the pandemic. However, the problem is now that there has been a community spread, many of the entertainment went on hold. I was fortunate to be able to host events, local events, small crowds, nothing extravagant, but I was able to do a few stuff during the pandemic. But now there's a community spread, like I said, we have to cut back on crowds and follow protocols. And it is very, very expensive. And actually, it's not economical to actually host events right now with the measures that are in place. So for me, right now, I think what we need to be doing in the entertainment industry is starting to accept that COVID-19 is not going anywhere, and we have to live with it. And I do not agree with only vaccinated people being allowed to attend events, because it's just not going to be economical to host events, especially in these small islands with these small populations. And many people are talking right now about only vaccinated people being allowed to attend, and only unvaccinated people now are really in a pandemic. But I think what we can start think about in the entertainment industry is having, and I think this way no one will be discriminated. You have a zone for vaccinated and a zone for the unvax, I guess, because I just don't see it economical for Culturama, for my events such as the Miss Caribbean Culture, to host any event and only accepting either unvax or vaccinated, because obviously the protocols don't want both persons together. However, also, but if a person is not vaccinated and that person is following all the pharmaceutical measures, all the measures to keep him or herself safe, that person might even be safer to socialize with than someone who is vaccinated, because remember, a vaccinated person can also transmit the virus. So for the entertainment industry, we need to accept everyone, provide zones, don't discriminate, and that way it will be economical for these smaller islands. For the bigger places with the bigger populations, they can do whatever they want. And that's a problem I find that we have in the Caribbean with these small populations. We look at America and Canada and England, and we think, well, because they're doing it that way, it could work here. But there's a difference in the population, so we can't just follow suit. So my recommendation for the entertainment industry is to don't discriminate, and that's going to be the only way it remains economical. And let's set up zones if we have to for now, until COVID-19 is eradicated. But like I said, I don't think it's going to go anywhere. It's going to become the common flu, and we just have to live with it. And that's how I'm going to open. I'm opening by saying, let's not discriminate. Let's set up zones. And to me, this is how we would keep the industry going. Thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, just want to make sure I got this right. All right, Randy, thank you so much. And I totally agree with you that we could find, ways and means to live with COVID. You said that we can't follow the bigger countries, but the bigger countries now are even moving towards living.
Ike, I think you may be muted. Sorry.
All right. So I said, I think we have the capacity to sit down with the powers that be and, have a reasonable conversation as to how to go about, moving forward post-COVID. And in the coming months, it will be very, 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 very important for us to have those dialogues so that all can be on board and move forward. All right, we're going to move right along with our presenters, and we are going to now invite Mr. Damian Crawford to make his presentation. Just to give you a little background information on who Damian Crawford is. Many of you may not know, but for those who follow regional news and regional politics and the like, you definitely know Mr. Damian Crawford. He has gone viral many a times. So just making sure that Mr. Crawford is available before I begin his introduction. So I'm communicating with the technique.
I'm here.
All right, Mr. Crawford, let me give you an introduction worthy of a man such of your caliber. There are many ways to describe Mr. Damian Crawford. However, the thumbprint of his character testifies of his resoluteness, passion, honesty, thoughtfulness for those around him. Mr. Crawford, widely known as an educator, entrepreneur, and outspoken equal access advocate, was poised for leadership as early as 2003 when he became the guild president at the UWI School of Hospitality in the Bahamas and the UWI Mona Hall chairman. The expressive leader that catapulted his way to national prominence in 2004 after leading a much publicized student protest at the University of the West Indies, Mona, during his tenure as guild president. Crawford has also spearheaded a number of initiatives over the years. These include the Peace Initiative in Spanish Town, St. Catherine, a free tutorial program dubbed Hope for CXC students, and a revolving loan scheme at the credit union for students in need. This credit union initiative now serves as a model for the universities in Jamaica. Mr. Damian Crawford, who earned bachelor's and master's degrees in tourism management, still holds education there and currently lectures at the University of the West Indies, Mona. By extension, Mr. Crawford's life in the political arena has also evolved. In recent years, the sharp thinker served 2 terms as president of the PNP's youth organization. His principled stance and distinctly innovative thinking on issues of national importance have earned him both the praise and anger of his political opponents. He says this: coupled with his family's pursuit of excellence, forms a steady axis which has prepared him for the reality of the political journey which lies ahead. Mr. Crawford has recently served as member of parliament in the PNP government, where he served as State Minister of Tourism and Entertainment. Ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome Mr. Damian Crawford. Good evening, sir. It's an honor.
How are you doing? Thank you. Thank you.
Good, man.
And thank you for the invitation. Yeah, I've been listening to the 2 presentations, and a lot of what they said as the background is very important for us to understand, because the context of our conversation is based on that background. Now, one thing I'd like to establish is that there are 2 legitimate ways to earn a living. You can get a wage or you can make a profit. And that is one of the reasons why entertainment is so important to the Caribbean, because it has provided an avenue for earning a living, especially through profit, for those persons who were initially low-income individuals from low-income backgrounds that were trained by our education system by applying muscle. And so in seeking a wage by applying muscle, they have been replaced over the last 20 years by mechanization and automation, leaving for the only avenues to earn a living to be profit, because there's very few wage opportunities on the farms as they were. I think you had sugar at one point in time, and that has basically died. And a lot of people were employed to basically chop cane. That's a muscle work. And those people weren't trained through the education system to do any other work than muscle work. They weren't trained to do what you call mind work or brain work. And so those individuals have then turned to basically hustling in retail and in entertainment as a low barrier industry for profit seeking. And they have turned to their talents as a equal low barrier industry for profit seeking. So throughout the Caribbean, you have seen where many persons have made reasonable income from having either the talent or having some support system for that talent. And that is going to include venues, that's going to include sound engineers, lighting, that's going to include MCs, that's going to include dancers, that's going to include brand and brand wearers of females who do brand endorsements and many other things, bartenders and the ecosystem is large. So what has happened was highlighted is that the entertainment industry within the Caribbean is dependent on two things that the COVID fight seemed to believe is necessary to remove people interaction and time of interaction. So many Caribbean countries have put a curfew into place, and many Caribbean countries have put a limit on people interaction into place. The entertainment industry also suffers in the Caribbean by the perception that it is recreation only and not necessarily a business. You can look at other entities like tourism, that is the business of recreation. And so, therefore, even with those limits placed on entertainment, they're often not equally implemented on tourism. However, entertainment is not perceived as a business of recreation, but just simply recreation. And by extension, it is the first to go whenever there is a problem, whether a crime problem, any security problem, a risk of a health crime, whether whatever. Entertainment is often treated differently than tourism when they are both businesses of recreation, but perceived by the Caribbean society as one being a business and one being just simply recreation. So that being the case, there are two possible approaches for the governments to consider. The first approach is to create a kind of a stimulus check, a acceptance by the government and the society that the entertainment industry is being asked to sacrifice on behalf of the country, on behalf of the society, and to provide some remuneration to the industry based on the sacrifice that they have been asked to make and for a very long time. So one example for is persons who own an asset. So a person who owns a sound system, a person who owns lighting equipment, a person who owns a venue, that asset is now experiencing depreciation, and the inability to achieve rent, to achieve use of the asset through payment is causing for that depreciation not to be satisfactorily remunerated. And so governments could always consider to give a 1/5 of the value of the in a form of compensation for the next 5 years or until COVID, until the thing is reopened. So between March 2020 and March 2021, those who own these assets would have received a value of 1/5 of the assets. Other governments, based on their ability to afford, could say 1/8, 1/10, but a reasonable depreciation consideration with the speed of and the likelihood that their current asset would become relics in a 5-year period is 1/5 of the asset. The other consideration is to work with private sector, in particular banks, for a deferral of loans. And so therefore, some would have bought their asset, their entertainment specific assets through loans, but others would have sustained their life assets through loans like mortgage and others. And so for those within the industry and within the superstructure and infrastructure supporting the industry, governments could interface with the banks and to have a deferment, which means if you were to end the paying in 2050, you will now end paying in 2052 and therefore have a moratorium on payment within the period that you are not earning. most banks would accept from government a guarantee of interest based on that moratorium. So all you're saying to the bank is simply, if you have the house as a collateral, we will guarantee you the interest over the 2 years that this person is delaying. And so a default, you will only lose the 2 years interest, which we have guaranteed if the person does. Then there could also be a contribution of a monthly stipend to those who are employed within the entertainment industry. In Jamaica, we proposed that there was a consideration of a utility stipend. So there are certain things that cause for a human being to live in dignity, one of which is access to electricity and access to water and access to shelter. And so a utility stipend could include a rent contribution, a electricity contribution, and a water contribution to the individuals on a monthly basis. And that would be on a household basis. So if it is a situation where two entertainment practitioners are within one household, only one contribution would be necessary for the utility contribution, being that the household have one rent, one light bill, and one water rate. So that is one avenue for which governments could say, okay, they're making a sacrifice on behalf of the society will make a contribution. The government will make a contribution on behalf of the society. The second is to actually treat it as other recreational businesses, for example, tourism, by putting rules in place and then imposing those rules, the abiding by those rules. Now, there's a difficulty and a difference between entertainment and tourism in the Caribbean in the main, because entertainment has evolved in an informal way that often does not require a gate or a gated space, a closed off space, while the hotel have a closed off, a gated space. And so they have more control over entry, exit, and activities within the space. For example, in Jamaica, street dance is a normal activity. The majority of events in Jamaica are non-venued street dance, and they depend not on a cover charge, but more so on the bar. Now, this is a special consideration that needs to be made, because if there is no cover charge, there is limited control over price changes to basically to facilitate profitability. So if it is that you were having a cover charge, you could try and increase your price. And if people were still willing to come, you could have less people at a higher price. Those who are aware of the accounting principles knows that profit is revenue minus expenses, while revenue is price times quantity. And so the commutative law of mathematics tells you that you can increase any side of a multiplication function for that to actually lead to the same result. So if you have 5 times 2, meaning 5 people times $2, you can turn it around to have 2 people times $5. So a cover charge can facilitate that if the person is willing to pay that price. If the person is not willing to pay that price, that is no longer available. The second thing is that a reduction in time reduces your earning potential, because your earning is not one-off, pay to come in, and that's one-off. Your earning is continuous, keep on buying from the bar. So as persons have less time to buy from the bar, it reduces their consumption maximum within the time that is allowed. And so my consumption maximum within 2 hours is less than my consumption maximum within 5 hours. And therefore, further reducing the revenue. So proposal for only vaccinated persons are made. It is worrisome for small islands and for small countries, because firstly, the percent of persons vaccinated is on average small. But secondly, the percent of the society is small. So in America, 1% of the American population is larger than the total Jamaican population. So America have 300 and odd million people, 1% of which is 3 million people. 1% is greater than the 100% of the Jamaican population and 100% of the St. Kitts population. So if America is able, an event is able to attract 0.1%, it is able to attract 300,000 people. So whenever you look at segmenting the society, meaning that you can only draw from this pool, smaller countries segment then become what we call immaterial, incapable to be profitable. And while it is not necessarily so for larger countries, because a minimal percentage is still a material number. So to that extent, the vaccine only, while on the health side is recommended, on the business side might not be able to be sustained. The second aspect of it is that the sponsorships become more important, because the non-client revenue is going to be an essential consideration for any person putting on an event. And we underestimate the value of that person, the promoter. Without the promoter, then almost none of the entertainment infrastructure is actually employed. So, I mean, we don't even sell a lot of records. It's not our practice to sell a lot of records. In fact, in Jamaica, the artist will give his songs to people who distribute it without paying him for the popularity of the song and eventually the live shows that he gets from it. So without a promoter putting on the live show, putting on the party, putting on the cookout, putting on the bingo, you don't have. So we have underestimated that value of the promoter. Now, if there is more private sector and government sponsorship within the first period, it will allow for easier implementation of some of the numbers reduction. So because you're getting non-client revenue. However, from the monetization of the internet, it also assists with sponsorship, because you have increased the visuals, the eyes, the frequency of seeing the brand, the number of people seeing the brand, and the extended reach of the brand association. So while I've seen many persons seek to maintain their own image through the social media, extending the reach of the events would also help with non-client income by giving brands a greater reach and a greater value that they may be willing to pay for. But governments may be interested in encouraging and facilitating, and through maybe tax cuts and things, sponsorship of events, to have that variable be done. The other consideration I think entertainment people should be pushing is for insurance, because it's not just hurricane and rain now. At any given time that there's a spike, the rules of the country may change. And someone made a very important point. Entertainment's difficulty is not demand driven, it is law driven, meaning there is still demand to consume, but the law does not allow it. So because you sell event tomorrow, plan today, if a man is advertising something August 15th, and the spike occur, or the Delta variant reach, laws can change and cause for that investment to go up into smoke. There should be some facilitation and maybe government subsidized for that kind of insurance to curtail or cauterize your losses to a maximum that you can know beforehand. So these are some of the things that I think that the industry can definitely consider. The final thing I would say is that I believe for the entertainment industry, we should move away from crowd curtailment to crowd tracking. So we should be able to, what they call it again, there's a scientific and medical term that they use to try and find who you interacted with through COVID. It's slipping me right now.
The contact tracing.
The contact tracing, thank you very much. So if it is that there is a system, a online website data management system that requires for event clients to register a telephone number. Once one person shows up with COVID, then it would be able to red flag all the individuals that were at the event, and you immediately can contact trace. The problem that COVID needs people to spread, and so therefore COVID spread at the intersect. If you do a Venn diagram, COVID are going to spread where A intersect B. If there's no intersection of A and B, there's no spread of COVID. It either die with the person or it dies when the person recovers. Now, once you can quickly find A and B so that you don't carry to B intersect C, you will curtail the virus movement. And so the events, if there was an ability to contact trace with almost immediate effect by having a registration and through a COVID monitor that may be mandatory. So either the person going around to capture the individuals and give them a special ban, or if you have a gate, they do it at the gate, or whatever it is, that contact tracing would reduce the risk of the entertainment industry and allow for its reliance on numbers to be facilitated, both reliance from the point of revenue and reliance from the point of experience. Nobody wants to go to a bar that is empty. You automatically say, now the vibes we say in Jamaica, and you try to go to another bar. So I believe that those two things. The first is to say, okay, we can't open, you're making a sacrifice, we'll make a contribution on behalf of society. Or the second is to be safe in its opening and to be smart in its opening. I congratulate the individual that made it clear that creativity isn't only in stage performance, because creativity in analysis and in decision making and in problem solving is what is necessary when you're faced with situations such as dire as these. And so I believe the entertainment industry, with their mind, the way their mind works, may be very essential to finding the solutions if sufficiently engaged. So that is my opening contribution.
Well, thank you so much, Mr. Crawford, and you have given us lots and lots of nuggets for consideration in our move forward to come out of this COVID situation. All right, we're going to move right along with presentations, and we're going to ask Mr. Conris Maynard to make his presentation next. Those of you who are listening, you're no stranger to Mr. Conris. He's no stranger to you. Multiple Calypso monarch. He was victorious at the polls. His first time out, constituency number 3, representative for the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, and the rest is history. Mr. Maynard, welcome, sir.
Thank you very much, Ike. Can you hear me? Can you hear me, Ike?
Yes, loud and clear. Go right ahead.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you. Thank you very much for having me. And let me take this opportunity to recognize the esteemed panel that we have, including yourself as the host, and Azim Bailey, president of PACE, and Randy Jeffers, a promoter and businessman in Nevis, and Damian Crawford, who is a former MP, and I think he's still vice president in PMP, if I'm not mistaken. And I also want to thank the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party for its vision in setting up this panel that we've had now for, this is the second one. We had one 2 weeks ago, discussing living on the COVID state of emergency. The moderator then was Stevenson Manners, and we had presenters like Dwyer Stefan, Glenn Y. Blanchett, Dr. Joy Leclerc, and Dr. Terence Drew. Well, tonight we are discussing the COVID-19 and the entertainment industry. And unfortunately, after coming after so much heavyweights before me, who are such esteemed individuals, they would have touched on many of the things that we would be discussing. But, you know, I will reinforce the points as I see fit here. Ike, as you know, is no secret that a lot of people scoff at the entertainment industry and frankly, may not give it the credit, the respect, the recognition that it deserves, especially in how it affects the economy of a country. When some people hear of a fete, the only thing they may visualize is people with a cup with alcohol, whining and having a good time, or when they hear of a queen show, all they think of beautiful ladies showcasing their talent or intellect or modeling a swimsuit. Or when they hear of a vibrant night spot, they may think of people liming their lives away. Or when one hears of a dance recital or a theatrical play, one just thinks about the dancers and actors on stage showing off what they have practiced for months. The entertainment industry, as all the other panelists alluded to, is so much more than that. It is vast. And in many instances, it is among the single biggest drivers of economies around the world. To have a fete, a queen show, a night spot, a dance recital, a theatrical play, and the likes, there is so much that goes on in the economy as a result. Artists and bands are engaged who previously had to record music at a music studio, had to pay writers or composers or producers to get the music done. Their agents and booking managers had to be engaged. Sound systems had to be rented, like yours, Ike, with sound engineers like Azim Bailey and equipment operators. A stage had to be erected, lights had to be installed and operated, someone had to set the stage, someone had to design the stage, someone had to print the material for the stage, tents had to be rented and erected, graphic artists had to design the tickets and the marketing material, web pages had to be designed and built and operated so that people can interact with the information. Show promoters had to promote the show. Radio stations like what you're on, Ike, had to be paid to advertise. Food vendors had to prepare food. That is after they would have shopped at the market and the supermarket. A bar had to be set up who had to buy drinks that were manufactured, maybe across by the brewery. Patrons had to buy clothes and shoes from stores in town, who had to previously order those clothes and shoes and ship them in ahead of time. Hairdressers had to do simple or fancy hairdos, and they had to bring in hair as well. Costumes had to be designed and built. Video editors and camera operators had to be hired. Taxis and buses had to transport patrons. The night spot had to invest in a location, for instance, whether it was a building or space, whether by building a space or renting it. Workers had to be hired to wait on the guests. When people's music is played or when their scripts are used, the creators have to be paid royalties. And it goes on and on and on and on. And so the entertainment industry is completely intertwined into our economies. And that is why we have to commend the pioneers of events such as the music festival here in St. Kitts-Nevis that we haven't had for the last 2 years. Back then, when it started, the Labour Party administration had recognized the broad economic impact that such a festival would have on the country. I mean, when we look at the US, for instance, in 2019, before COVID-19, the entertainment industry was the 9th largest contributor to the GDP, contributing well over $900 billion. That is ahead of industries like construction, agriculture, and transportation. In Europe, for instance, the entertainment industry is the 3rd largest employer. And so when we have a worldwide pandemic that is fueled by the congregation in mass and intermingling of people, as other persons reference, which is the very bedrock of the entertainment industry, then it goes without saying that entertainment industry has been hit and probably hit the hardest. It was the first to shut down and will most likely be the last to fully open up. Now, we don't have any stats for us here in SKN, but even Stevie Wonder could see that the entertainment industry has been near to zero over the past 16 months or so here. In the US, for instance, where you don't have a monolithic government, where everywhere wasn't shut down all the time. According to Polestar, live music saw a 78% reduction in revenue in 2020. It was probably almost 100% here in St. Kitts. In Europe, in the first 6 months of 2020, there was a 51% reduction in revenues in the industry altogether and 56% reduction in performances. And I'm convinced, as I said, our stats here in St. Kitts must be far worse. Now, this has obviously had a grave impact on our economy and service providers in particular in the industry. You know, my heart really, really goes out to all who have been affected by this pandemic across all industries. But entertainment practitioners were already starting out rough because the industry, especially in St. Kitts-Nevis, has largely been undervalued. And it didn't offer the type of certainty of employment like many other jobs, even if those jobs paid low. In particular, the performing artists. I mean, that has almost been completely non-existent over the past 16 months. Before the pandemic, many of those performing artists, DJs, you know, singing, upcoming stars in their own right, many of them were not making ends meet from entertainment in the first place. So we can only imagine the despair that many of them are feeling. And also how it is going to impact those who wish to make a living in this industry. And then to compound the issue, Ike, the industry has, because the industry has not yet been fully developed, the industry is still largely informal and very difficult to track. And this is where I think that the state, the government, and affected stakeholders need to, firstly, one, appreciate the immense value of the industry and recognize that a significant specific investment must be made. I was reading somewhere that a good investment in culture and arts could significantly impact an economy in just 1 decade. And so it will need that foresight from government and major stakeholders to understand that that investment is a must. However, before we get to that big investment, in order to expand the extraordinary talent that we have here in St. Kitts-Nevis, and some on this very panel, like Azim Bailey, Mr. Jeffers as a promoter, Ike as a practitioner, we have to get things done right now in order to provide some relief and action right now. I have heard from the community, for instance, that there seems to be nothing specific or major in terms of stimulating activity once again. The small musicians, the promoters, the service providers, and the like, you know, they're saying they feel largely left out of any recovery effort. So firstly, I think there needs to be some dialogue and engagement with industry players. It cannot be the case that one day the practitioners like Ike wake up and hear that there are new guidelines for their industry, and up to now, the government has not engaged them or the rank and file in the industry. How can the industry operate safely in our new normal without the stakeholders having a chance to discuss and give their suggestions as to how to proceed? So once you have that engagement, the next thing, of course, that is needed would be a stimulus package. And this must be crafted with the very specific objective to get practitioners on their feet shortly rather than in a couple of years. Because remember, the entertainment practitioners have clearly been out of bread for well over a year. They have no restart capital. They have not been making any money. They've been using all of their reserves. As Damian mentioned, practitioners would have been severely affected in the non-use of the equipment. So the equipment is there sitting down, being depreciated, and they're not getting any value out of it. So I like the suggestion of using that as a metric to kind of guide how persons are compensated. But the difference and the problem comes in is that the industry is still largely informal, and sometimes it can be difficult to track that. For practitioners, there will be outstanding loans, unpaid mortgages and utilities and so on. And so that stimulus is needed immediately in order to provide that jolt of revitalization for the industry. Now, after that, after we have stimulated them and gotten the industry back up, and I'm saying them as if I'm totally out of it too, as a calypsonian and a performer, because I'm wetting my hands right now to see if I still have it. I hope Azim is listening. I'll be calling upon you. But so I was saying that the practitioners have been severely affected, the non-use of the equipment, they still have loans, they still have unpaid mortgages, they still have utilities, they need the help right now to get started. And, you know, one of the interesting things about the pandemic, EK, is that there are actually some businesses that have thrived during the pandemic. We won't have to call names. There were some that had to remain open. They had to provide services, and they thrived. And perhaps there should be some sort of civic responsibility on their part to provide that sponsorship that Damian was speaking about because of the importance of the entertainment industry. In the US, because this is where I can find stats and data, in December of 2020, there was $15 billion included in the stimulus package for the entertainment industry. $15 billion in just one of the stimulus packages. Now, as I mentioned as well, another critical thing is that in this creative space where you have creative people, it is now incumbent upon us and the industry to even get more creative in how we can and practitioners deliver their craft. But as he also said, it's going to be absolutely critical that assistance is given in monetizing these new creative ways, because if someone is just going to say, okay, let me turn on my Facebook, I'm going to play live, how are they compensated for that? That has to be structured in some way that, that is beneficial to them. And then finally, so once we get out of this stimulus part of revitalizing the industry, because it is absolutely critical, it is a major part of the economy, then it is time in St. Kitts and Nevis for us to be thinking the big game when it comes to entertainment and the entertainment industry. We must realize that we have to make a significant investment, and we have to do it now. When you want to achieve results, at some point, you have to take a major hit in terms of an investment with the view to get a reward later on. So a couple of things are still missing in St. Kitts and Nevis that, you know, we have been promoting for some time now, and we will continue to promote. You know, the building of a state-of-the-art National Performing Arts Center and Academy. It is not sufficient just to build the resource or the infrastructure, but we must be able to train our practitioners to make the best of their talents and their craft. We have to allow creative entrepreneurs and practitioners to be able to import their equipment, the raw material, the instruments that cannot be sourced locally at reduced or no duty at all. Because those costs are so onerous and burdensome that oftentimes persons who have the ability to be or to increase the professionalism of their product are unable to do so because of the capital restrictions when it comes to their finance. We also need to strengthen our regional and international networks. I mean, certainly an entertainment industry in St. Kitts must link up with the entertainment industry in Jamaica and must link up with the entertainment industry in, say, Trinidad, because we share a lot of the same music. And there is a lot to learn from those who have gone a little further than us. So we have to strengthen those relationships, geared to, you know, sourcing opportunities for artists to grow and develop via training, funding, and so on, and even opportunities for internships, promoters and practitioners being called by Damian in Jamaica to spend a few weeks in that entertainment circle. We have to promote aggressively the professionalization and monetization of the entertainment and arts industry in St. Kitts and Nevis. When someone has a big song in St. Kitts and Nevis, we can't just be thinking of St. Kitts and Nevis as our oyster anymore. It has to be the world. And so while you're sitting down unable to perform, at least you can be making royalties from your creative acts. And so we must aggressively pursue that. And also we must strengthen our legislation to support the rise of an entertainment industry, strengthen and comply with the intellectual property legal framework that already exists around the world, and making sure that our artists and creators are protected and can be adequately paid for their work. So those are some of the things that I would say how the COVID-19 and the entertainment industry interlink. I'll leave it there for now, Ike.
All right, thank you so much, Conres. And of course, thanks to all the panelists who presented here this evening. At this time, we will be taking your questions and your comments on what you have heard, or any suggestions that you would probably want to add to what you have heard so far. I myself have a few questions for the panelists who presented this evening. To tie into what Mr. Crawford and Azim Bailey, and of course, Randy and Mr. Maynard would have said, how do we get from a point where we are right now, where entertainment is not being seen as an essential service or essential work? How do we get to that place where entertainment is respected? Entertainment is seen as a job, as a business. Yes, we as entertainers have a lot of work to do here in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of formalizing. Some of us have, some of us have not. And so we still have that ways to go. But in terms of changing the mindset of the people who are, quote unquote, in charge, how do we get to that point from where we are right now? What do you think some of the things that we can do to get that mindset change? Anyone?
Well, Ike, I think that what you're speaking about is something that is important, but it also assumes that the powers that be, the policymakers, do not actually know how important it is, and I don't think that's the truth. I think that a lot of times where entertainment is used to agenda, and in that time it is always easy and quick to find those who influence within that space. And so it's important for us to then hold those accountable as people, as practitioners in this space, hold those accountable to provide for us the environment that we need to thrive. For instance, we saw, we had elections last year, how entertainment was used to get across certain messages by political parties. I think it's important for us to not only be used in certain times when it plays to the goals of others, but also leverage that influence in order for us to get what it is we need done. I think we, however, really need to cement what that is. Like, we are here talking about things that should be done, things that could be done. And a lot of times that voice isn't as, it isn't, we lack that central voice, we lack that voice of togetherness. A lot of times there's a lot of little pockets of conversation that happens, but we are going to have to really put forward the needs of the creatives. We're going to have to really put forward the expectations of the creatives, and then hold those who are in a position to deliver accountable if they do not do so.
But let me interject here, because as president of PACE, I would put forward to you the suggestions that you just made, that we need that central unified voice to, liaise with the powers that be in terms of formulating policies and getting that sensitization about the importance of entertainment. Those conversations that you speak of, have you been having them with the powers that be as the president of PACE?
Yes, what's been happening is we've seen after the last election rhetoric that suggests that entertainment is now being seen as something that is valuable and important with the development of the new entertainment ministry. Now, I believe that we are in a unique position where we can now influence what the mandate of this ministry is going to be, what we want to see, what those expectations are. We have been having those discussions, and I think it's important to have those discussions. But even more so, the accountability is where it's going to is where we're going to really see what comes out of these conversations. So the hope is that we can, in a way, crystallize the expectations, and then we're in a position to hold those in a position to deliver accountable.
All right. Anybody else on the panel want to take a go at that question?
Right. The short, can you hear me, Ike?
Sure, I can hear you.
Yeah, the short answer, how do you get the policymakers and so on to realize the significance of the entertainment industries? Perhaps to put an entertainment industry connoisseur like myself in government, that's the short answer. But on a serious note, even though that's a serious note, one of the critical things is going to be that the industry itself has to realize the power of strength in numbers. And so the point of asking, for instance, like the president of PACE, how are they assisting in coalescing the industry together to show up at the doorstep of the government and say, look, over the past 10 years, I have been driving 5% of your GDP, because that is roughly what it is in some parts of the world, 5% of the GDP of the country, which is a significant amount. As I mentioned, in the United States, it is bigger than construction, transportation, agriculture. Only the big things like finance and government and healthcare and so on are ahead of it. So show up together and say, look, this is our value, this is our worth. Things usually don't happen without some sense of lobbying and coming together and saying, look, this is where it is at, this is what we can achieve, this is how we can move forward. Another way, of course, is, and this is how it kind of happened for some of the other countries like Jamaica and Trinidad and so on. You had some creative geniuses that went beyond the borders first on their own effectively without much structural assistance, and created a space or a name that carried weight thereafter. So the industry must find a way as well to ensure that it promotes itself and its own. If there is a rising star, if there's someone, understand that if one gets out, if one becomes a mega hit, if only one, it can't be everybody, gets there, then that will provide an impetus for the policymakers and the power brokers to pay attention on the significance of the industry. So those would be the two quick things I would say on that.
Okay. Damian Crawford made a couple of suggestions with regard to safeguarding entertainment, given what is happening now in terms of putting a cap on the number putting a cap on the time when you can operate in terms of the curfew. And he made mention of insurance. I'm not too sure. I tried to look it up while I was here. I'm not too sure how insurance actually works here in St. Kitts and Nevis in terms of insuring an event, insuring equipment, insuring practically your livelihood as an entertainer. Probably Mr. Crawford could give us a more in-depth insight as to how probably it's done in Jamaica. And Mr. Bailey could probably chime in on this one in terms of how we can realize something of that nature here in St. Kitts and Nevis.
Yeah. If I can, before I go to that one, jump in on the first question as it relates to how do you become perceived as a business of recreation. We don't have to reinvent the wheel because tourism went through that. Tourism as a course at the university actually started in the late 1970s, early 1980s. Now, some people say, oh, then that is a long time ago, but look at medicine and business. Those are 200 and 300 years old. Yeah, you understand? So tourism wasn't perceived as important to study, wasn't perceived as important to encourage. The first thing is how you function. How practitioners function impacts to a large extent how they're perceived. If you function as if it is not a business, then it's going to be perceived as not a business. You understand? So therefore, how they function is going to have that impact. But the second thing is that most entertainers perceive themselves, in particular the face of entertainment, for which the public use to decide if it is good or bad. Most of the times when people decide upon a politics, what politics is or what movies are or what St. Kitts is based on their interaction with a very few people from St. Kitts. You understand? So sometimes I hear people say, oh, I love Jamaicans. They possibly met 3 of them, but they use that as a basis, right? You're gonna have some people in St. Kitts now use Beanie Man and say Jamaicans are so cool, that's how they are. So if it is that the faces of the entertainment industry function as competitors with the assumption that cooperation is impossible if you're competing, and I make sure I highlight the assumption because manufacturers compete, yet they cooperate. Hotels compete, yet they cooperate. Supermarkets compete, yet they cooperate. However, entertainments compete and perceive it against the rules to cooperate. So the faces of the industry are oftentimes at odds in a competitive thing to be the best, and by extension seek not to cooperate. And so most times, even when you make these organizations, I think it's a PACE was the name of yours, we have Jaria in Jamaica and stuff like that. The most influential ones don't participate because they perceive that competition is the order of the day. Keeping myself as the best is the order of the day. And that don't allow for cooperation in their minds, which is incorrect. But that is what it is in their mind. The third thing is to acknowledge the combined influence of the industry. Entertainment is very influential. I can speak to Jamaica, I tell you what to drink. We have changed our preferred alcohol based on song about 8 or 9 times. So when Red Bull and rum and Red Bull was a thing, Guinness was a thing, when Bounty Killers are drinking Guinness by the case, Hennessy is now a thing. Anything that they say we consume. So what that means is that they are initiators of economic activity. And initiators of economic activity are very influential to those who are participating and those who are controlling economic activity, private sector and government. If they acknowledge that, they would recognize how important they are. And then finally is to study. Nothing is taken seriously if there's no study around it. Most things that don't have study is perceived to be serious. You understand? And so therefore, you see more now sports is being taken seriously as you have departments of sports. I think the Caribbean should consider like a TED Talk for entertainment. And it can move from stage performance. It can move from how to breathe, how to hold the mic, how to make a record, how to whatever. And then that study and then maybe even certification increases the assumption that it is legitimate and not just ramping. Those are my opinions. And to that extent, when I was the Minister of Entertainment, we started an artist registry in Jamaica, so as to legitimize. Even when you go to the embassy to get your visa, how do you prove that you're an entertainer? By singing a song for the person doing the interview? That's disrespectful and embarrassing in the first place. But you have no way to legitimize by saying this is my ID as a as an entertainer, So I think those are the things. Now you said, how do you insure? Insurance is simply analysis of risk and a cost to mitigate that risk. Now, Jamaica don't have the type of cancellation insurance because pre-COVID, it might not have been a product that is desired, but there has been through history government intervention to subsidize the introduction of something that eventually becomes the norm. You understand? So it is for some actuarial scientists to say what is the probability that COVID will lock down the country in the next month, in the next 2 months, in the next 3 months, and then to say, okay, you can insure up to $300,000 or $1 million with $100,000. So it means, therefore, that you will then now put the 100,000 and know that that's the maximum you will lose. Even though you are insuring up to $1 million. You understand? Mm-hmm. And there could be some government intervention, a guarantee that reduce the perception of risk from the company side. So government may say, I guarantee a return of 300,000 or 10% or 20% of the investment if by law we change the rules after initial promotion or after initial government approval to we have permits. So after you get your permit, if we change the law after that, you guarantee 30% and you register at the point of permit. So that will help for the insurance company to say my max exposure is X or Y. So it is not something that exists currently. Some persons would have had in the past and in some of the bigger countries, natural disaster insurance, like if your event rain out or if snowstorm and stuff come, we could look at those to create the cancellation insurance.
All right, pretty good stuff. I'm awaiting questions from the outsources that we have in terms of the YouTube and the Facebook. I see one question here so far from Mr. Conris Maynard. Since you hinted at it, somebody's asking if you have any intentions of returning to the Calypso arena.
Will that help with the COVID-19 situation?
Perhaps. You never know. We could probably get some good inspiring Calypso to motivate the people, man.
Well, the truth is that I have been trying to prepare myself to get back in the swing of things. I've been procuring some stuff where I can, and we're gonna see what happens. So just it's just now for the inspiration to come in. There is a lot to sing about. There is in terms of Calypso, and then there is also the pent up anxiety, I guess I can say, of people waiting for that opportunity to go out. It's going to be something. So even if a pan or a piece of pipe start to knock, people might just dance just in order to get out of the situation that we're in, where people feel like they've been locked down and unable to express themselves. So yes, I am definitely trying to prepare myself to see if there's anything left in the creative tank.
All right, thank you so much for the response.
We could get Azim Bailey to respond to my calls. I've been asking him for something, but
he doing me this exact same thing. So ain't just you.
Doing the exact
same. Keep him happy, a lot of mercy. Okay, gentlemen. Two other questions, and I'm hoping that Randy could come in on this one. Recently, we have seen where a number of countries around the world, and some as recent as Antigua, making it abundantly clear that there will be a separation of the vaxxed and the unvaxxed. Another leader of a country was quoted as saying that there are two pandemics going on right now, a pandemic for the vaxxed and a pandemic for the unvaxxed. Now, Mr. Jeffers would have made a recommendation that we don't go that route because of our small size and our small capacity. And we have zoning of people. How plausible do you think that would be? Do you think that would be something that the NEOC would be willing to take on board, coupled with the crowd tracking that Damian Crawford mentioned, and how will that affect cost of production?
Well, you can hear me?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes. Well, firstly, EK, how I'm looking at it, it's very important. I want the world to get to herd immunity, but it's also very important that we save and we protect that 20% of the population who may not have taken the vaccine, the experimental vaccine, because those 20%, that 20% may play a very important role in the future of saving our planet. So my thing is, we don't need to discriminate. We need to protect everybody, whether you're vaxxed or you're unvaxxed. So we cannot throw the unvaxxed under the bus right now. So my thing is, if you want to save business, like I said in the past, earlier in my presentation, we need the unvaxxed to also support the business. So just opening up and only allowing vaccinated people, I don't know. I look at that as discrimination. That's how I'm looking at it. I don't see it anywhere else. And like I said, the people who are unvaxxed may be using the pharmaceutical measures better than those who are vaccinated, and they might be safer to be around than the people who are vaccinated. So I am just trying to push everybody included and don't leave anybody out. That's how I'm looking at it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but that's just how I'm looking at it.
Pretty good sense. I can understand exactly where you're coming from. Brother Bailey.
Yes, I do believe that it's important that we have a goal to which we are moving towards. I think all of us can agree that we do not want to see a world where persons are not afforded the opportunity to socialize and interact with other people in society based on that status. That being said, we must look for ways to move towards that direction. I believe it's important that we then implement all of the technology and tools that we need and that's available to us to try and achieve that. So for instance, as it's being done in some of the European states, for example, what is happening is they have what is called a sanitary passport or a health passport, which then allows persons to enter into certain entertainment venues and entertainment spaces. What this does, it allows you to declare your status or give access to persons who you interact with and an idea of exactly what your status is. So you may be able to, I may say not be able to, but it actually does say, well, for instance, this person is vaccinated, fully vaccinated. It also may say that this person would have done a PCR test within the last 3 days, or that can be uploaded to the database, as well as this person may have actually recovered from the disease and so has developed some natural immunity to the disease. That again is one of the aspects. That again is one of the aspects that I think is not being discussed enough. What place do the people who've recovered the virus, where do they come into all of this? Because of course they would have then acquired some natural immunity. Again, in terms of using technology, I mentioned earlier in my opening remarks, the use of rapid testing. I think what's important is to recognize what needs to happen is we need to mitigate the risk of persons coming to a particular area with the virus. And so if, for instance, there can be a situation where persons are tested upon and then based on the result allowed entry, just like we do now with the temperature as a gauge. I think we could then implement some of these other things. In terms of cost, I've been seeing that some of the rapid tests have been as low, are being sold as low as under $5 US. In some cases down to $2 US. So I do believe that it may be an extra cost on the promoter, perhaps, if not even something that can be subsidized in some way by the government to allow us access to these tests. But I do believe that there are ways in which we can accommodate persons being able to interact socially, no matter their vaccination status. I think if we have the will, I think that it's possible. And so for us to not do so, I think perhaps may just be, to be honest, and I'm being frank here, a bit of laziness to not want to explore these other options, but to just go ahead and say that we're not going to allow persons to engage socially because they have not been vaccinated. I think that is short-sighted, and especially given the fact that there are ways in which we can accommodate and mitigate the risk going forward, given the present technology that's available.
EK, you're still you're still muted.
All right. My apologies. Mr. Crawford, I was asking if you wanted to add something to that aspect of the conversation. If not, you want to go right ahead.
Sorry, about the vaccine versus the non-vaccine.
Yes.
Well, as I said, there are multiple opinions as it relates to whether a person should or should not take the vaccine. I will not comment on those. I'm saying that the size of St. Kitts, what's their population there, if I may be reminded?
50,000.
50,000 people. What percent currently have vaccination?
It's up to about 70% with the first dose and just shy of 60% being fully vaxxed.
All right, so let us put that there is about 30,000 adults and you're at 70%, so 50% would be 15,000, so about 20,000 people actually now have the vaccine. Some of those are Christians, some of those are adults, some of those not necessarily coming to your event. So if you should really put on an event and depend only on the percent of those who are vaccinated to come, there might be a problem for you. And it's bigger in Jamaica because I think we're at about 9% vaccination. So when you look at that reality, you see that it is difficult, even if you want to encourage. Now, based on what I've been reading in the science, if you're at 70% vaccination, you are almost sure to have achieved herd immunity, because basically every time somebody bunks up into somebody else, the probability that a person is a carrier is going to be less. So you're almost there, but I cannot see the viability of small islands depending on a segmentation of the society, a pre-segmentation, not just for who want to come to the event or who want to participate, but first for those who are vaccinated. I think that it is economically unviable. But we're all only assuming here because only time can prove it to be truthful. But I just don't see the numbers to be acceptable. And as somebody said, there might even be some constitutional things to be answered. On what basis would you say that not being proven a risk as it relates to not tested to have the virus, you prevent me from participating? Those are questions that more enlightened legal minds might be answering. But from a marketing and economic standpoint, I fear that the market size will be dramatically reduced to becoming immaterial.
Well, I can tell you pretty much what you're saying is at least 5 times worse because the going out crowd in St. Kitts-Nevis is so small that we ain't even sure if 50 people might show up to just a vaccinated only event. And that just is just not tenable. So it's a lot worse. We are almost out of time. A question coming in here. What are your thoughts on the sports and entertainment portal the government is introducing? And I think Mr. Jeffords and Mr. Bailey may want to jump in on this one. They are giving promoters a portal to verify the vaccination status of patrons. How comfortable are we with that? Does it infringe on anybody's rights in terms of their medical status, their medical information being readily available to anybody per se on that promotion team? What are your thoughts on that portal?
Well, Ike, as I was saying, it's similar to if you're going to travel, right? You have to have somewhere now to enter most countries to prove that you've either been vaccinated or you have done a negative test. I believe that the onus should be on the patron to allow someone to access that. So for instance, like with the example I was given, the health pass, for instance, if I present to you my phone with a QR code that allows you to see a certain status, whether it is my vaccination status, the fact that I've uploaded a negative test within the last 72 hours, or the fact that I may have recovered, I would have had the virus and then would have been counted among the recovered. I think that is something that helps me to be able to interact. And that has nothing to do with whether I'm vaccinated or unvaccinated. Like I said, it's just if this person is saying that I need some way to mitigate the risk to enter into this. I don't think it has to be only vaccinated, like I said, but I can then allow them to be able to view my status based on me presenting a QR code. So if the portal, because the data is there, and I think that is one of the things that is a bit different about this pandemic as opposed to some of the other global pandemics we'd have had hundreds of years ago. We now have this technology and we now have all this data. And so it's up to us to organize it in a way that allows us to move forward in a way that helps us to reach where we want to reach. I do understand that some people are skeptical about allowing people to see this, but again, I believe that there can be measures put in place because again, this is not something that allows you to see a person's full medical history. It's limited to for instance, those three aspects that I outlined. So yes, it may be a bit invasive, but I do believe if the onus is on the patron, then I'll be the one to present this and then allow you to access my personal information, then it really comes down to a decision for the patron at that point.
All right. Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Ike, I think I just want to piggyback on what Azim is saying here. And the question you asked, you basically asked, are we comfortable with information being shared to other persons? I think how Azim said it in the very beginning is perhaps where it needs to stop, that the patron must be in control of that information and whether or not the patron wants that information shared. So it should never be the case that the information is shared without the patron's consent, because then you allow that, then what else are you going to allow? So not that I'm gonna give any particular ideas of how to deal with it, but the way, for instance, that he, as I'm outlined, that he sees in other countries is not someone forcibly obtaining that information. It is the patron who has decided to share that information with someone. And whether or not you have a fingernail broken, or you have diabetes, or you have, some strange disease, it is up to the patron or the person to be willing to share that information outside of any authority that has the right by a law to access that information. So I think that is going to be critical, and I wait to hear the full details on what is being proposed, because it can't be one way. It only could be another way. So I want to hear for sure what is being proposed in a situation like this.
Anybody else want to chime in on that?
Ike, just a question. This is for any entertainment, or this is for major entertainment? I mean, if this is for, are they talking about music festival? I mean, because this cannot be the way for a Friday night club where you have, your Friday night line. So I'm just wondering, are they're looking at the size of the venue for this, or this is just for any entertainment going forward?
Well, we aren't too sure. Let me just say, I'm not too sure the size of the event, or if it would be just for a weekend lime or a bar lime. We are just not sure. What I would put forward, though, I mean, I'm loving the example that Damian Crawford gave about the crowd tracking. For instance, if you are, I mean, we have apps like those that you could use. If you're going to, let's say, Hit Vibes Beach Bar, you could probably send in a registration electronically through your phone to say, well, okay, I'm heading to Vibes Beach Bar, and if there happens to be an outbreak, at least it's in the system tracking you as to your whereabouts, people you came into contact with, and that kind of thing. It might be a little invasive.
I don't want to be tracked though.
It might be a bit invasive, but I think it's a give and take with this whole COVID thing, because the powers that be, the doctors and the science people, their main thrust is to keep this thing uncapped. But to keep it uncapped, you're going to kill out the entertainment industry. You're going to kill out a lot of families, because if I don't DJ, if I don't sing, if I don't perform, can I just get up today or tomorrow and get a job working in a law firm, or working somewhere else that is considered an essential job? And if I'm not vaccinated, then that opportunity basically goes through the window. So again, is it a give and take situation, or we just have to just do this thing one way? Anybody at all?
Well, Ike, I want to jump in here and say, based on what some of the panelists have been saying and so on, you always need a creative way of how to go about doing things. And, what I'm hearing from all of the commentators tonight is they have an issue with this idea of the separation of unvaxxed and vaxxed at events and so on, etc. And so as a creative thinking government, one should be thinking about, okay, we've achieved X so far, we've achieved this amount of vaccination so far. What is it that we need to do to perhaps ensure that there is greater herd immunity, right? We've spoken many times before, a lot of persons out there are willing to take vaccinations. They support vaccinations, they agree with vaccinations. but you're asking them to take a vaccine that is new, not even a year old. And people have realistic reservations, especially when the vaccines that are available have so many identified issues around the globe. I mean, we have the AstraZeneca here in St. Kitts-Nevis. And in many of the developed nations, perhaps in all of the leading healthcare developed nations or leading healthcare centers around the world, they are restricting the use of AstraZeneca. So I think it is only fair to hear the concerns of persons who don't want to take the vaccination now. But perhaps government needs to be thinking.
But let me put this to you, Conrays. Is it a situation?
Before you do, Ike, just let me finish the point. So what the government perhaps need to be thinking about is maybe I need to increase choice. Maybe I need not to just focus on this one silver bullet. Maybe I need to invest a little bit, and by now it could have happened, so that people have more choice, because there are other options in the marketplace that don't have the type of negativity associated with the vaccine that we have. And that could be an effort to get closer to the herd immunity than, say, vaccine shame people or to discriminate against people. So Ike, you could go ahead.
Right. Well, I wanted to add that as well as part of the conversation, having a different choice of vaccines. But do you think that it's a situation where the vaccine just ain't good, or it's because of competitiveness between the different vaccines and the companies? And so, a little campaign might get pushed out here to talk about a little negative vibes. Is it a situation where the vaccine just ain't good, or it is because of, the business gymnastics?
Well, clearly, I'm not a specialist in this area, and I won't be making any determination as to whether or not vaccines are good or not. What I do know is that people will always have reservations. And if our government, certainly I don't believe, let us say what you're saying is in fact true, that there is competition and negative press that is out there and so on. Well, then if I was in government and there is an opportunity to increase choice to thereby negate that concern that you have, then I should be doing that. Because it doesn't, we have the options of different vaccines, for instance, next door in countries that are close to us, with similar sized populations and so on. So it seems to me, just like, for instance, Azim said, maybe a laziness sometimes on the part of the government to say, you know what, instead, just because I am getting this free or low cost or provided to me, I'm not going to put in the effort to go any further. I'm saying, no, we ought to do that. This is a serious thing, and people have legitimate concerns, and rightly so, because this is an evolving situation and so on. So I think that the government needs to be a bit more proactive in identifying creative ways to encourage how we are going to get out of this, instead of using a bull pistol or a force fist to compel people this way or nowhere at all. No, we have to walk with people. We have to understand the concerns of persons, a young woman who has blood clots in their family or something, who are predisposed to a number of the things that they're hearing. So we just have to be able to walk through the population with that in a caring, empathetic way, and not in a bullish way that I think has characterized some of the approaches of the government.
Thank you for that. Since I'm here in the radio station, the telephone lines are ringing, so I'm going to bring up this caller. Caller, you're on. Go ahead. Hello.
Hello. Good morning. Sorry. Good night.
Good evening.
Good night.
Yes, go ahead.
Okay. So one of your panelists, and I love your program for tonight. I do love it. I'm listening intently. But one of your panelists said that tourism is the business of entertainment. But then entertainment is not seen as a business here in St. Kitts. Now, in that same breath, we still, or the tourism still need the entertainers to perform a business in tourism. So how would that work? Where tourism does not see entertainment as a business, but they still need the entertainers to do their business. And it's not fair.
All right. So I think that's a question that anybody could tackle. Gentlemen. The panelists gonna sleep on me, man.
I think Damian was the one who addressed that issue, but I don't see that he is still connected.
Internet probably dropped out.
Yeah, I don't know if he's still connected. So he would have been the appropriate person to address that, as he was the one who made the comment.
Right. But I think in all fairness, that as Azim said in his opening remarks, that the powers that be, they know the importance and the impact that entertainment can have in terms of promotion. I would have listened to a parliamentary presentation by Mr. Damian Crawford himself, putting forward in Parliament that the entertainment was used during campaigning. So they understand the importance. Songs were put on dub plates for the politicians to promote themselves. And now here is a chance for you to return the favor and to actually see the entertainers as something that is a business. And in my humble estimation, I think that they have failed at that, because the criteria was put out as to how you as an entertainer could access whatever stimulus is there. Now, to be fair to the entertainers, some of us aren't registered as business per se. Some of us have not contributed to Social Security, but we have contributed to this country in many ways. We live here, we purchase things here, we send our children to school here. According to the parliamentarian in St. Martin, we side chick, we wife, everybody here. And we use these monies to support our families and support the economy. And so not being registered as a business and not being registered at Social Security, in my humble estimation, was not needed at this time. What I thought could have happened is that coming out of this, there could have been a serious call to order, including PACE and the Ministry of Entertainment, to get all entertainers, all service providers properly registered and to provide some sort of system that shows, well, okay, fine. If this is what you contribute, this is what you get in return in terms of support and insurance and the whole 9 yards, stimulus. Yeah. But to exclude them at this time, I think is just a little bit unfair.
Yeah. I think that it's what you're saying is so true. I do believe that we do have a problem here where, because of the informality of the industry, we do not have a lot of persons who have gone to, let's say, Social Security and would have registered, or Inland Revenue and registered. Also bear in mind that there are a lot of persons who, even though they work in entertainment, may not necessarily be a business owner. For instance, persons who work along with certain service providers, etc. However, as much as that is a problem, it is still no excuse. Seeing that in cases where there's an absence of what we would call our term proper paperwork, there is still ways and means by which to certainly be able to, through the courts, and find out who has been using the land, who would have lived there before, etc., etc. We have seen programs that are even happening right now as we speak, where persons who have not been registered in any database that I can are receiving support from the government. And so if that is possible for certain people. Why not for the entertainers? And so I believe that there is ways and means around that. I do believe, like you said, it could have been a call, but I do think at this point, recognizing the state of the industry, and also recognizing that there's ways and means that we can verify persons' involvement in the industry in the absence of those registries that we have, that the government has an obligation to really provide some support for the persons who then asked to make such heavy sacrifices for the betterment of.
All right.
Ike, I think
Go ahead.
it's a very simple way to put it, and you know, is that by putting those restrictions, it is effectively a cop-out. It is an easy way for the government to say, look, I have this option here for entertainers, but strategically trying to limit their output in it. Because in St. Kitts and Nevis, we know every single last one of the entertainers here in St. Kitts and Nevis. Nobody could show up and say, I am a big superstar who does sing, you know, down Lime Keel Bay. It just ain't gonna happen. So it is really a cop-out. And as Azim said, there are other avenues where we see that persons who have no registration, nothing to verify their existence in a particular field are getting assistance. And so it is really a cop-out, and that is what's true.
Okay. In terms of the registration, Mr. Bailey, do you think that that is a responsibility that PACE would be willing to take on? Also coupled with that, the study that Damian Crawford would have mentioned, a study of the entertainment industry to get or to gauge the amount of monies that entertainment contribute to the economy, the various sectors that it touch, the various disciplines and skills that it encompasses. Do you think that's something that PACE would be able to undertake and present to the government?
Well, in terms of the registration, that is actually something that we want to promote for our members. I mean, professional is actually what the P in PACE stands for. And so we would hope to see most, if not all, of the persons who are involved, especially business owners, especially entertainers who consider themselves really and truly a brand and a business unto itself, to be registered. One of the things, though, that that we must be aware of is what is it that registering affords me as a business owner. One of the problems that we are seeing is now that any Tom, Dick, and Harry who want to put on an event could go and police.kn and put in a request and receive a permit for a party or some type of event without having a business license, without having been up to date with Inland Revenue, so forth and so forth. What you find happening is that people who have been compliant all these years are now asking themselves the question, well, what is the purpose of me going ahead and doing this? Because it really comes and feels like a cost to you. You have to go, you have to continue to register, you have to keep proper accounts. Even just remember, if you forget to pay quarterly, then you have to deal with late fees. And so the question is, yes, we would like to see people formalize and use that as a way to really gauge the state of the industry. But at the same time, it can't be something that feels more of a cost and more like punishment for persons who trying to do the right thing and remain compliant. Also, in terms of the studies, there have been a lot of studies done, especially by the OECS Small Business Unit. I was privy to one that was done back in 2015, I think it was, that looked at the contributions of all the copyrighted material and what percentage it actually contributed to GDP. So some of these types of studies have been done. I think it's important, though, that we really are able to decipher what it is we want to achieve with these studies. And yes, we as PACE, we really are looking into perhaps finding a way to bring this information to the forefront to really bolster with evidence the case that we're putting forward for certain things being done.
All right. Well, gentlemen, we are running out of time. So at this point, I will go around the table and ask you to give your closing remarks, and we proceed to the wrap up.
Okay, I'm gonna go first. Thanks again for inviting me to this discussion. And I'm just promoting peace and in having, everybody included. I don't believe in discrimination, and I don't want anything implemented saying it's for vaccinated only. So hopefully it doesn't come to that. We don't follow suit like we see what's happening in the other islands. And like I said, it's very important we protect the unvaxxed, because that same unvaxxed community might play a very big role in the future in saving our planet. However, I still want us to get to herd immunity so that we can go back to some sort of normalcy and businesses can function economically, make money, pay our taxes. But I do not believe in discriminating anyone. Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Jeffers. Who's next? Brother Bailey?
Well, yeah, again, as well, I'd like to thank you guys for the opportunity, for allowing me to come and speak on the topic. It's a very timely topic. And I do believe that through the discussion tonight, there have been several things put on the table, suggestions put on the table that could really help us to move in the right direction as entertainment tries to navigate past the present situation, the present pandemic. It's important for us to recognize, one, the important contribution that entertainment makes on a macro level to the entire economy, to our lives, the important role that socialization plays in allowing our society to function properly. But even on a micro level, this is how a lot of people feed their families, pay their bills. This is a way that persons are able to live. And so we must recognize that we cannot just cut the lifeline for people and leave them hanging. And so moving forward, and there's been a lot of talk about programs that could be instituted, ways that we can really help to give back to the sector, which has given so much for the safety and the betterment of the country as a whole. And so, like I said before, I think there's an obligation for us to do so. In terms of moving forward, we've discussed several ways that we feel that we can both save lives, or protect lives, and also continue to support the livelihood of so many people. And I do believe that if we are to ignore those as we move forward, it'll be a huge disservice to those of us who depend so much on people being able to gather, to socialize, and to be entertained. So I am very thankful for this forum, because it would have allowed us to really bounce ideas off of each other, to put out in the public several ideas, and to really, as the old saying goes, iron sharpens iron. And we've been able to really get some concrete suggestions as we move forward. Hopefully the powers that be here, hopefully the powers that be enter into these conversations with the stakeholders, and we are able to see some of these things being implemented, because I believe that all of us really do want what's best for the country moving forward. So hopefully that is what we see. Thanks again.
Thank you so much, Mr. Bailey. Mr. Maynard, you have the final wrap, as I think Mr. Crawford would have dropped out for internet purposes or reasons.
Right. Thank you so very much, Ike. On behalf of the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party, I want to thank everyone who contributed to this very timely discussion here tonight on this Right Direction panel discussion, discussing COVID-19 and entertainment. I want to thank Azim Bailey for agreeing to add to this conversation, Damian Crawford out of Jamaica, Randy Jeffers out of Nevis, and Ike yourself from here in St. Kitts, all persons who have intimate knowledge of the entertainment industry. And coming out of tonight, obviously, this is always to implore a movement in the right direction in terms of, one, recognizing the significance of the entertainment industry in St. Kitts and Nevis, that it is completely intertwined, that it is a significant generator of the economy here in St. Kitts and Nevis, and that it ought not to be cast aside. But additionally, us as practitioners in the entertainment industry, as Damian Crawford alluded to, must make ourselves so irrefutable that it is very difficult to take us or the industry for granted. So we must ready ourselves as well. And we must come knocking at the doorstep saying, this is what we have to offer, this is what we are worth, and you must take us seriously. And I want to emphasize some of the things coming out of tonight in terms of appealing to the government and the stakeholders that a substantive stimulus package is necessary for the industry and for the practitioners who would have been affected greatly over the past year. This industry was the first industry really to close, and it will be the last industry to fully open. And so there have been many creative suggestions tonight. And I think what is also important, which we have seen an absence of when it comes to the government thus far, is there must not only be a talk of an all of society approach, but it must be actual. So, a stimulus package for the entertainment industry must involve the entertainment stakeholders. It must involve those who are part and parcel of it. And none should be discriminated against because you say, for instance, well, Conris Maynard is, for instance, yes, he's a six-time Calypso king and represented the country all over the place and win road match and win this, but he's a Labour, so we're going to leave him out. That is not the approach. That is not the approach that is necessary if we are going to be serious about getting this out. Any application, for instance, of concessions or the application of a stimulus package must also be party and colorblind. So not because Azim, for instance, and I'm just calling Azim's name here, is a big Labour man. It's just to make the point. If Azim Bailey is a big Labour man, but he is integral in the industry, then he ought not to be discriminated on for that. So what we see here is that a direct stimulus package is needed that is discussed with the stakeholders. And also, there is no time like now to invest in the future of the industry, because it is one of the industries that can launch St. Kitts and Nevis to heights that it has never been before. It has happened in other territories that export their talent, such as we see in Jamaica, we see in Trinidad, and we're now seeing in the smaller territories like St. Vincent and so on, that have some incredible artists, soca and similar, coming out and representing themselves to the rest of the world. We cite with Arrow making Montserrat a household name of music production around the globe. I think people used to fly to Montserrat to produce and record their recordings there in a studio in Montserrat just because I was from Montserrat. So there is a lot to be done, and we here in the St. Kitts-Nevis Labour Party recognize that, and that is why we have brought this panel together to have this discussion, perhaps to help put fire on the policymakers to take this industry seriously, and those who have been affected, from the person who sings on the stage to the person who sells pudding in the pot next to the event, or the person who has the tray, or who has a bus that has food on the inside to sell to persons. It has to be taken seriously because it has serious impact on the lives of hundreds and thousands of people here in our federation. So thanks once again for everybody for being a part of this, and stay tuned for other discussions that we will have in the future touching issues that are relevant to the people of St. Kitts and Nevis.
All right. Thank you so much, Conress. Thank you so much, Mr. Damian Crawford, Mr. Azim Bailey. Thank you, Randy Jeffers, for your time. And of course, thanks to all of you who viewed and those of you who listened. Thank you for your time. Thanks to our lone caller, those who posted your questions. Thank you again. And as Conress mentioned, look out for more discussions to be held, dubbed The Right Direction. Tonight we dealt with COVID-19 entertainment. Hopefully more conversations will surround other aspects of our coming out and living with COVID-19. I'm EK, and I want to bid you good evening and rest well and hope for a brighter tomorrow. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen.